I'm afraid we don't agree with it. We think, obviously, as everybody does, that this is the most horrific crime, and the boy who did it will be punished for a very long time.
Well, he's going to prison, isn't he?
Exactly. So he will be punished for a very long time. But what we would say is it's not actually in the public interest for him to be named, because what's in the public interest is rehabilitation of those who commit these terrible crimes. So I just want to give you the example of Mary Bell. So Mary Bell, in the last century, actually killed 2 children, and she was named at the time, but then her identity was changed. And apparently now she lives a totally law-abiding life. She's been able to move on. What we need is for those who commit very serious crimes not to commit them in the future. Rehabilitation is the absolute goal. And if we stigmatise and vilify totally those who commit crimes, their chances of rehabilitation are reduced.
I think when a judge says to a defendant, as he did in Glasgow, some of the wickedest, most evil crimes this court has ever heard in its long history of dealing with depravity, that is what he had committed. There'd been no remorse. Is there a sense that it's in the interests of justice that a criminal, a murderer like this, should be publicly named?
It's in the interest of justice that we create a situation where that person does not commit crimes again. So it's in the interests of justice that he gets a sentence, which he will do, which will be very severe. That is justice. He will do his time. But in order for justice for society, we need to ensure that rehabilitation for those who commit crimes in their youth is absolutely maximised. And you don't maximise it by naming and shaming people in this way. And in a way, because the revulsion is so great, the more important, actually, not to name him. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be very condemnatory, and absolutely we are,
you cannot be
of the
condemnatory
crime.
of someone who you don't know.
You can. You absolutely can. And we can learn as much as possible. We don't know who Mary Bell is now.
No,
that doesn't mean to say
from
we
Mary
didn't...
Bell, but if we look at a young man, 16-year-old, guilty of one of the worst crimes, many journalists...
It's terrible.
And yet, perhaps society, perhaps people need to understand why he did it, what drove him to do it, and we're not going to be able to work that out unless we know who we're dealing with.
Actually, we can. So there are many teenagers who do commit really serious crimes in this country, and most of the time they are not named, and a serious case review is done by experts in welfare and social work to work out what went wrong. And that happens up and down the line all the time. We absolutely need to know why he did it. Absolutely. We need to know in case there was anything that could have been done differently, so that we can learn about teenagers who commit crime, but we don't need to know his actual identity for that. We can know a lot about the crime, but for the sake of him moving on, we need not to name him.
Is it right that in the days, well, the day after a conviction, in the months after he's committed one of the worst crimes certainly Scotland has ever seen, that we are talking about the need for rehabilitation? What about the need for punishment? What about the need for justice for her family?
Justice for her family comes in the sentence which will be meted out next week. The justice system has found him, has convicted him, and will give a very, very severe sentence. Actually naming him will not help that victim's family move on. I don't believe. If they want it, that's fine. But in terms of the learning is...
Well, if you say if they want it, that's fine, then there is an argument for doing this.
I mean, it's fine for them, but actually we've done research. The Standing Committee for Youth Justice has done research into the naming of those under 18. And what we have found is that the effects are very negative, not just for the individual child, but for others in the community, for the family. And crucially, what we need is for children not to commit crimes again.
You say children not to commit crimes. I mean, there are those. You will walk down the street and you will hear people saying that there are certain crimes where someone goes to prison and they throw away the key. This would certainly be up there.
People would want it to be up there, but I would say that that's not what we do in this country. So for under 18-year-olds, we usually give life sentences where the person does come out and where you would hope, through the rehabilitation that they'd had, that they could then live a law-abiding, productive, integrated life in society. And that has happened to other children who've committed serious crimes. What you have to remember
That's decades away, though, decades.
It is decades away, but actually, if you can find that name on Google and that person still has that identity, then their life is ruined when they come out. And that, as a society, is not beneficial.
Penelope Gibbs, very good of you to come in and talk about it. Thank you very much. If you've got your views, you can tweet me at BBC Simon McCoy. You're watching Afternoon Live. Now, thousands of people gathered in Sheffield this morning for a flypast in honour of 10 American airmen whose plane crashed there 75 years ago. Tony Folds was an 8-year-old boy when, on this day in 1944, he saw the US bomber crash into the local park. It's thought the crew were deliberately trying to avoid nearby homes to save the lives of residents. Well, since then, Mr. Folds, who's now 82, has dedicated